This program was first broadcast on Canterbury's access media station, Plains FM, and was made with the assistance of New Zealand On Air.
It's time for Emergence News on Plains FM 96.9, Citizen-Made Radio.
Kia ora and welcome to Emergence News. My name is Nigel and in the studio with me today are John and Peter. We'll meet those men in just a moment. We are Share International volunteers based in Christchurch, New Zealand, and we're bringing you this program from the fantastic Plains FM studios in the heart of the city in Christchurch. This is one of the few programs that brings you a very curious mix of spirituality, politics and economics. On this program, we aim to raise public awareness of what is being done and also what still needs to be done to improve social issues such as the global food crisis. Our world leaders have allowed and they've tolerated this emergency to unfold, while solutions to end the food crisis do actually exist. Our leaders acknowledge there is a crisis, which I guess is a start, but the global food crisis it's also a climate crisis, it's a conflict crisis, and it's also a rising costs crisis, and we can relate to that, Peter and John, can't we? The rising food crisis here in New Zealand.
It's man-made. Yeah. It's man-made. It's not a natural phenomenon. It is a result of commercialisation and
out of control
of our food chain system. Yeah, we've allowed our food chain system to be owned by those that have profit as their goal, and we've enabled them to make it. We need to be involved in dismantling it.
And we're on a planet with enough food to actually feed everybody.
Exactly. Brian Bruce did a local documentary here recently where he said New Zealand produces enough food to feed the population 40 times over. Was that the number, Nigel?
Yeah, it's something like that. And yet
it's so expensive here in New Zealand.
Food's too expensive and we've got people going to food banks and we're a food producer.
Yeah, we live in the land of plenty and somebody's getting more than their share out of it.
That was a really good documentary and it's worth looking on YouTube if you're interested. The guy's name, he's a journalist, TV producer called Brian Bruce.
Yeah,
New Zealander. Yeah. And he's just done a documentary on food, the food crisis here in New Zealand, of all places.
He actually has his own YouTube channel so that you can pick it up there.
Yeah, okay. All right, so, and on the subject of, we're a developed nation here, but on the subject of debts, poor nations are burdened with debts. And I was reading this week that the UN chief says forcing poor nations to prioritise debt payments over social investment is a disaster. He says deep reforms into the global financial system are needed and it's urgent. This is the UN chief saying this. Does anyone listen?
That's amazing stuff, isn't it?
Does anybody listen to him? Time is up, he says, for 3.3 billion people. Now, that's almost half of humanity living in countries that spend more on debt interest payments than on education and health, than on looking after their people.
Another man-made problem, Nigel.
Those citizens are suffering from an outdated financial system that reflects the colonial power dynamics of the era that it was created. So, and we've said that before on this program, haven't we, that our financial and economic systems need updating.
Absolutely need revision. The way we manage this planet, economically, environmentally, and politically, is not working. We need to change.
Yeah, it's a mode that's out of form. Author Benjamin Creme, he wrote, the current global crisis is in fact a spiritual crisis. A spiritual crisis for the entire world. He says this spiritual crisis is focused today through the political and economic fields. Now, here's the uncomfortable bit. Brace yourselves. He says the West have lost total lack of concern. We know and we put up with the fact that millions of people are dying in the East and in Africa for a lack of food which is rotting away in the storehouses of the Western world. The fact is that we actually tolerate that. We put up with that.
Yeah. We store food to control the market price. So we don't release it in volume that would allow the price to drop. So in the name of profit, humans are dying on this planet. It's a terrible situation.
It is a terrible situation, and it's, when you think about it and consider it, it does make one feel uncomfortable. All the government should be under pressure from an educated public to take a broader view. Here in New Zealand, we are about to have an election, but you do not hear our journalists being asked, why do we not demand that people stop going hungry? Not one journalist gets asked that question. So, this weekend, the weekend just gone, we got together, like we do before, to plan the program coming up.
It's planning, Nigel. It's planning.
It's deep thinking in action, isn't it? Yeah. So we got together and we enjoyed some good food and a good coffee, and we were having a conversation about people in our family or work colleagues or people that we know who have given up. They've given up caring. The world's a mess. I can't do anything about it. And there is a real sense of hopelessness. So have you got any answers to that question? What would you say to a family member that says to you, John, oh, look, I've just given up?
I would say that the information for change is available. I would say that forces are at work on this planet to bring about change, and I would say be very, very careful who you vote for, and make sure that the person you're considering voting for can answer the questions that you have around some of these big issues facing everyday New Zealanders. And I would ask my friends and relatives not to vote for people that have a colour necktie around their necks that happens to appeal to them. We shouldn't be voting along party lines. We need to be voting for those people that represent the ability to make change in this country.
We should keep this guy on, Peter.
Yeah, sounds good.
Do you agree with that?
Indeed.
What's your focus today, John? What are you going to cover?
When we talk about hope, I'm going to talk about the cavalry coming over the hill.
Oh, good. Hey, some good news.
Yeah.
Great.
And if you lie down on the ground, you'll hear their hooves. I saw that in a Western once.
Aragon did it in The Lord of the Rings as well.
Oh, yes.
And Peter, what's your focus today?
I'm looking at a book here by Jason Hinkle. He says, less is more, how degrowth will save the world. He's talking about not going for the economic situation that most of the politicians talk about, but looking at degrowth. And I think these, we all realise that these limited life and bigger and more GDP every year is just not feasible. It's just not practical. It's not workable.
And this concept of degrowth, it's something that you've talked about too, John.
Yeah,
it's a really interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a number of economists and people that think about this stuff coming forward and saying, gee, if you think you can live on a finite planet and sustain continual unlimited growth, then you're either delusional or mad. So we live on a finite ball of dirt. All of our resources come off that finite ball of dirt, and it is finite.
Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to find out a bit more about this degrowth with Peter next, and then we're going to finish with the cavalry.
Coming over the hill.
Woohoo! This is Emergence News, brought to you by Share International volunteers based in Christchurch, New Zealand. One of those people. Here he is, the man himself, Peter.
Great.
You've got some information on degrowth.
Yes, just straight out of the latest Share International, Nigel, and it's headed up How Degrowth Will Save the World by Jason Hinkle, and he's written a book, More is Less, and How Degrowth Will Save the World. And he's actually an economic anthropologist, Fulbright scholar, and fellow of the Royal Society of Arts, so he does have good qualifications there. He says that as Britain is expecting to be the only major industrialised country to see its economies shrink this year amid rising interest rates and higher taxes, the government is frantically trying to find ways to boost economic growth. This is from The Guardian. And the idea of economic growth is necessary and clearly a good thing, entrenched in our day-to-day thinking and speaking. Our politicians insist that growth is what they aim for, as it is obvious. We don't necessarily know what growth means, but the idea is that we can get richer and richer, do better than our parents, and that our children will do even better, is deeply embedded in popular discourse. Politicians think that they must emphasise it, and economies that are growing are clearly that aren't growing are clearly in a bad way. And it's true. For those of us in the developed world, lives have become better, at least materially, along with, however, the gross inequality that in recent decades has become so much worse, where the rich display their wealth before the poor, from Maitreya. But in recent years, there's an increasing vocal counter-movement to survive as a species. If planet Earth itself is to survive, perpetual growth cannot be our aim. That is the gist of Jason Hinkle's book, Less is More, and how degrowth will save the world. It seems perfectly logical. Our planet is burning. People are dying from pollution, greed, and waste. We are killing ourselves, and all that seems to sustain is this myth nirvana of economic growth, without which they say we will stagnate. Hinkle sets out to show that this is indeed a myth. And he's talking about showing a comparison of different countries. Happiness, well-being, and a sense of meaning do not result, as conventional thinking assumes, from a constant increase in growth, a high GDP, as in Costa Rica, where income is a fifth of that of the US, from organising production around human well-being, investing in public goods, and distributing income and opportunities more fairly. He lists many countries that have a better measure of well-being than the US, although they have a lower GDP.
Bhutan's another one.
So Benjamin Krem carries on with the same sort of theme, to be quite honest, and he's saying that the major problem is the fact that we're coming to the end of a civilization. We're witnessing the breakup of a civilization of the last 2,000 odd years. And the beginning of the process is creating a new civilization. And that is why Maitreya is in the world, to inspire and guide us, to educate us in the creation of the correct structures, political, economic and social, which will allow us to go forward in our evolution on the right premises. At the moment, we see a super division in the world, a separation into major groups, the developed and the developing world. The developed world usurps and wastes 3/4 of the world's food and 83% of the resources. The third world, as it is called, has to make do with the rest. As a result, 38 million people are at this moment starving to death in a world with a huge surplus of food, at least 10% per capita. What is required is a reassessment of who and what we are in our relationship to each other. Maitreya says the first step we have to take to address these problems is to see ourselves as one, brothers and sisters of one humanity. We have to get that sense of globally that we are one people, one group, and therefore the food, raw materials, energy, scientific know-how, and educational facilities of the world belong to everyone. Well, that's sort of a long way off, isn't it? And
share and save the world.
In the way, but, you know, that makes perfect sense to me. You know, we've got to realise that we are one humanity.
One spaceship, and we need to figure out how it works and how we interact with it. So, one economy, one spaceship, one life.
That's right, yeah.
Thank you so much, Peter.
Great.
And we're going to turn the spotlight onto you in a moment, John.
Yeah.
The cavalry is coming.
Yes.
We've got some good news.
Yes.
It's coming soon.
All right.
Just before we cross to John, I just thought, if listening to what you just said there, Peter, what was the name of the author if anyone wants to look him up
Jason
online?
Hickel.
How do you spell?
Hickel, Hickel.
And that's less is more.
And degrowth.
How degrowth will save the world. Jason Hickel. Check it out online. Over to you, John.
All right, so I mentioned cunningly that the cavalry were coming, and I also mentioned cunningly that actually planet Earth is a spaceship, and we are moving in a flotilla of other spaceships, which we call, in our ignorance, planets, and they are circling around the sun, and the sun and all these other planets we call the solar system. We are on a journey through the cosmos, and it takes 25,000 years, am I correct there, gentlemen, to go through the cosmos?
Each cycle.
Okay, each cycle. So, Benjamin Creme, latest Share International magazine, question and answers at the back of the magazine. I'm fossicking around as I do, looking for a topic. Peter and I have agreed we're going to talk from stuff from the latest Share International. Benjamin Creme, the Space Brothers and their craft, the cavalry, and the Space Brothers who share this solar system with us, right? Here we go. Benjamin Creme's asked lots of questions, and one of the things I love about his style is when you read his books, when you look at some of the question and answer stuff he does in the magazine, it's really short, it's really succinct, and it gives you lots of great ideas. So, he's asked, in what ways do the inhabitants of our sister planets help humanity? This is way back in 2009. Benjamin Creme comes back with, the first thing to understand is that UFOs may be unidentified by the government agencies, but they are real, they exist, and they have a mission. Without their help, this planet would be by now uninhabitable. There are people on all the planets of our system. The masters of our planet are in touch with the masters of the various planets, and the solar system acts as a unit. The planets are not isolated but are in contact moment to moment, and they evolve together. If one falls behind, as this planet has done, gosh, really have a look around, it causes concern for the others. The beings in the UFOs, from whatever planet, mainly Mars and Venus, but others too, have a tremendous task in working to eliminate, or at least to reduce, pollution. Pollution is the greatest threat to humanity. More deaths are caused by it than by any other cause. It brings about the breakdown of our immune systems and therefore opens us up to all sorts of illnesses to which we would otherwise be immune. The space people are concerned with making this planet habitable. They go through our skies mopping up and neutralising large amounts of the nuclear waste and the general toxic filth that we pour into the atmosphere. They're not allowed by karma to clean up the planet completely, but within karmic limits they do so. Otherwise, life on this planet would be very painful indeed. More people would be dying than are dying, more people would be suffering from Alzheimer's, and daily we would be more and more asphyxiated.
Do you think they're also working on the soil, the land, and also in the sea?
He says they go down into the ocean and they do whatever they can do within that karmic environment to eliminate this high level of pollution. But I'll come back to that, Nigel. Okay?
Wait, there's more.
Wait, there's more. So he goes on to say we owe the Space Brothers a tremendous debt. All right, so all of a sudden the words "in the Roswell incident" catch my attention. So Benjamin Creme again. In the Roswell incident, the Martian pilots sacrificed themselves. They deliberately landed on this planet, which caused the destruction of their vehicle and themselves, in an incident which is now famous throughout the world. The vehicles themselves are etheric.
Right.
And,
That's
lads,
why you can't see them.
I am lunging for the esoteric glossary of terms, and I'm very pleased. Oh, no, neither of you brought it with you today. Thank you very much, lads.
I didn't realise that was compulsory.
It's compulsory from now on that you bring the esoteric glossary.
But we knew you'd have it.
Okay, you've got to have it with you. Come on, we're playing in the big boys club now. Here we go. The vehicles themselves are etheric. So I went to section E in the glossary of esoteric terms.
You've got one of your special tabs.
I've got a tab on it and I've got it highlighted. Back away, Nigel. back away. Okay, etheric body, the energetic counterpart of the physical body, composed of 7 major centres, chakras, and a great many minor centres, a network which connects all of the centres and small threads of energy which underline every part of the nervous system. Blockages in the etheric body can result in physical illness. So that's the microcosm, right? Etheric planes, the big picture, 4 planes of matter, finer than the gaseous physical, as yet invisible to most people. So the Space Brothers and other enlightened, elevated, developed peoples exist in the etheric levels, on the etheric levels, right?
I'm sure Peter said on a previous program that certain cameras can actually catch
that's
etheric
right.
matter.
Can do, yeah, definitely. Well, the Kelman screams can pick up the emotional vehicle as well, can't they? The not just the etheric, but also the colours of your aura.
Okay, so what we have is advanced civilizations that no longer exist on the purely physical, which is where we exist, but exist on these etheric levels, which are higher states of physical matter, which we actually can't see. So he goes on to say, the vehicles themselves are etheric, like the bodies of the Space Brothers, but they can lower the vibrational rate of their vehicles and of their own bodies until they come within range of our vision. It's temporary. And as you probably know if you've read about the Roswell incident, the bodies disintegrated so fast that the investigators couldn't believe they were human bodies. They were human, but they were Martian human, and the speed of disintegration was due to the fact that they are essentially etheric. Likewise, their vehicles. So, listeners, if you are lucky enough to see a Space Brothers vehicle, it is because they want you to see it.
That's right.
Because they lower the vibration so that you can see it.
Temporarily.
Now, Benjamin Cream goes on to say, and once again, this is another snapshot. For over 60 years, governments worldwide have withheld from the people the reality of UFOs or flying saucers. Further, they have sought by all means to denigrate the occupants of these visiting craft as aliens, destructive and harmful to the people of Earth. This enables them to keep the populations of Earth under control and avoid panic. They have denied the experience of hundreds of thousands of intelligent, open-minded citizens. Thus, they have created a major myth, and this makes me laugh. Flying saucers do not exist, but they are dangerous and rapacious to the men of Earth. Nasty little contradiction. Likewise, they have taught the people to deride the notion that crop circles are a legacy from space. Yet every government has unassailable proof of the existence, creativity, and superior technology of these brave and harmless visitors from the sister planets of our system. Our profound ignorance of the subtle planes of matter has allowed the governments of the world to maintain this deception for so long. Now, he's written about this on many, many occasions. And I'm going to wrap up with the Space Brothers cavalry coming over the hill. The Space Brothers, one of their major activities is this mopping up of pollution, caused, Benjamin Cream tells us, in the main by nuclear radiation, which is pouring out from the nuclear powerhouses all over the world. Every underground nuclear explosion also emits into the air dust that is totally contaminated by nuclear radiation.
So it's toxic.
And we know that about Mururoa, don't we? We know that the French nuclear tests in the Pacific Ocean, cracked the atoll, thereby releasing radiation into the ocean, but also the site now is radioactive, right? So he goes on to say this dust is contaminated with nuclear radiation and has a half-life of thousands of years. So he goes back to tell us, within karmic limits, the Space Brothers mop up as much radiation pollution as possible. And as I said earlier, they go down into the oceans and neutralise waste which we have dumped there and which otherwise would kill off marine life and further poison the planet. He tells us the planet's already polluted to a degree that is dangerous. He goes on to go again, pollution is the greatest killer of all diseases of humanity, much of it to do with radiation. He finishes with, the advice of Maitreya and the Masters will be to close down immediately all nuclear fission power stations in the world. They could be replaced tomorrow with safe fusion process of nuclear power as an interim measure before the coming technology of light. And he says we owe the Space Brothers a massive debt which we may never be able to repay. That latest Share International also talks about fusion nuclear research, not fission, F-I-S-S, but fusion, F-U-S-O-N. Much simpler, much cheaper, much safer way to generate energy from nuclear power. Share International magazine, a phenomenal resource on all aspects of human life. All this information can be found on the Share International website, www.share-international.org, and also don't forget the podcasts, which are available on the Plains FM website.
We welcome your comments, questions and feedback. Please contact us at emergencenews@gmail.com.